Yes.
I know you said that we would be changing the navigation structure at the admin page, but is that, are we going to, or can we in the future, maybe in the following?
Sure, you're free to change the layout.
Even now.
Yes, you're always free to change the layout, make it better. What I've given you is a bare bones implementation. It's yours. You can make any new improvements to that. What we do ask you is that wherever this ends up living, right? That as part of the deliverables, we ask you to provide a link in Heroku of where the actual page lives, so that TAs can go and take a look at it and play around with it and whatnot. Okay. All right. And also the look and feel that I'm providing here is again, it's bare bones. If you want to make it better, certainly please do so. All right, so let's talk about testing the web layer. So up to this point, the unit tests that you worked on, in the last sprint, were testing algorithms that were by design self-contained. Right? It was a function that it took as argument, several objects that had a particular structure and particular values, and then the algorithm just churned through these input objects and then provided an output object. Yes, and it was by design self-contained. It was modular. It didn't have any dependencies with databases or files or networks or anything like that. Okay, so doing a code coverage test for those kinds of algorithms is fairly simple, right? You do code coverage and it tells you, oh look, there's a branch here that's not passing through. Maybe I'm going to tweak my unit tests to make sure that indeed passes through that particular branch. Now, for testing a web layer it's a little more complicated since a web application, by definition is running inside of a framework, inside of a much larger infrastructure, has to have a server running, listening to a particular network connection. And that server might even have other dependencies, right? Dependencies with other resources out in the network, right? Particularly, it might have dependencies with a database, right? With a certain schema, certain tables, logging in and whatnot, a connection pool to these servers that might be running, somewhere else in the geographically. So we'd like to be able to test that as well. Right? If you've run right now a code coverage on the code, you might get very low 20s perhaps, right? Because even though all your unit tests are successfully testing all the algorithms that you worked on so far, you're missing out on all the controllers, you're missing out on all the repositories. There's a lot of code that never gets executed. Okay, so we need to be able to test that as well. So let's look at how is it that we would go about that. So first of all, we'll need to install a couple of dependencies that you might already have in your project. In particular, I'm sure you already have the first one here, Spring Boot Starter Web. Maybe you don't already have this one, Spring Boot Starter Test. Okay, that we're going to be using for testing purposes. This one brings a couple of annotations that allow us to isolate certain components, right, when they're under test, right, so that we can mock all the different other dependencies, so that we can isolate it and do a unit test all by itself. Okay, other dependencies that you might already have is the Maven Spring Boot plugin. Another thing that you might already have is that your application needs to be a Spring Boot application with the @Spring Boot application annotation, which I'm pretty sure you all already have that. The demo application class that has the main class, the one you run from the IDE, should be tagged as this over here. All right, so let's look at testing controllers.